This is the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. My name is Angelika Solitska, and I am your host and the founder of the Voice of Early Childhood. Today, I have with you once again, with us all, Carmela Garcia Manas, who is Headmistress of Miss Daisy's Chelsea and PhD researcher at the University of Dundee in Scotland. So thank you so much, Carmela, for joining us once again.
It's a pleasure to be here again with you, Angelika, and with you all. Thank you.
So this episode is part of a series around Carmela's PhD research into education for social sustainability through socio-dramatic play. And in the last episode, Carmela discussed a little bit of background, so why she conducted the research. She discussed the role of socio-dramatic play and what this is, and dimensions of sustainability beyond the environmental emphasis that we are so used to kind of really focusing on. And in this second episode, Carmela is going to discuss the first theme that emerged from her research, which is all around young children's perceptions of poverty and race. A really interesting topic, and there's a lot to unpick here. So I'll let you introduce us to this theme, Carmela.
Thank you, Angelika. It is indeed very interesting, I must say. I think that in terms of social sustainability and all the research that we have done so far in ECC, in early childhood education, is being mainly focusing teachers' perspectives. And I think that in order to implement a program that truly works, we need to know what the children think and what the views are in terms of social issues. So yes, this was one of my main goals before conducting the case study. And this comes because children's play often reflects their existing perceptions of reality. And these perceptions are built in their past experiences. And which means that a lot of young children haven't experienced the wider world. And so different situations that other children may be in or other families. And so to overcome this limitation, I wanted to introduce new scenarios that I will go deeper into later, to introduce new scenarios to expose children to unfamiliar situations that are related to, again, social issues. Therefore, this theme emerged, particularly two subtopics that are poverty and race. And yes, I'm very, very looking forward to share it with you all.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming on to share something that is so, like I said, such an in-depth topic and also a challenging topic to discuss because, like you said, we often discuss this. So, we may discuss issues like race and poverty, etc., from adults' perspectives, but how do we do that with children? And I know that, like I said, in the last episode, you introduced socio-dramatic play as that medium, that method to really begin to understand children's perceptions of different issues that are so much wider than what we usually address day to day. So would you like to tell us a little bit again about kind of socio-dramatic play, specifically in relation to understanding poverty and race with children?
Yeah, so the program that I implemented was around uneven distribution of resources and diversity. So what I did was plan different scenarios, dramatic, related to drama, so the children could somehow reenact different scenarios that are not the common scenarios. For example, if we think of young children role-playing at a school, we may think of them in the kitchen corner preparing some tea and pancakes, but we may not think of children pretending or trying to find water because of the lack of water at the house. So this also is very important in terms of context. And this is one of the variables of the factors that I took into account before developing the program. In the school, I did a case study. I was aware that the children were came from a very privileged socioeconomic background, and therefore the scenarios that I introduced were more scenarios that they may not again be aware of or have experienced before, such as, for example, a lack of water. And but this again, Angelica, may change if we are talking about doing or using social dramatic play for social sustainability in a different, perhaps, school, different place in the world, as you may imagine.
So it's all very much based, like you say, on the children's context, what they have experienced previously, what they haven't experienced previously, and how do we bring these new scenarios to them in obviously a safe way, emotionally safe as well. We can't put them in a scenario where they literally don't have water for a day, but it's all about replaying that situation in order to build that empathy, isn't it? That's what you talked about in the last episode as well, to really ensure that children begin to understand what it's like to be in other people's shoes and other children's shoes that are also their age as well, but elsewhere in the world or in the country. Exactly. Maybe even down the road as well, you know.
Even down the road, yeah, even down the road. And yes, that's the ultimately the goal, and it's very important to do it, as you said, in a safe way, in an age-appropriate manner, and at the very same time, what would be a safer space than the school? The school where you are safe, you are protected, and at the end of the day, you are role playing, and the children are aware that they are role playing at the end of the day. And this is also taken into account when analyzing the data, yes, and fidelity. And so with triangulation, I also made sure that I took into account that the children are role-playing and they are aware of it. They don't suffer. They don't feel like there is no water if there is no water coming out from the taps. In fact, when we role-play that scenario, the children propose different suggestions, such as, okay, let's all go to my house. There's plenty of water there. So you can see there is always a limitation, and role play at the end of the day is still role play, but at least gives them that chance to develop, as you say, that empathy, that compassion, that respect, and also other skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, and most importantly, that sense of agency.
Yeah. And that sense that they can potentially make a difference to the world. But that really goes beyond that play landscape, doesn't it? Beyond that role play, beyond that social dramatic play. So how do you bridge that gap between the play that they know, like you say, they know it's role play, they know they're safe, they know that this is just pretend. How do you bridge that gap between that role play and real life situations where you then try and support their understanding that this does occur in real life, and children do go through this, and they can't just stop pretending and go to their house or go to the tap and actually get water? Is there that element of reflection with the children?
Yes, that's a very good point, Angelica. Indeed, at the very end of each social drama session, we sat down and we read a story in relation to the topic, and then we will together share our own points of views and reflections and so on. I think this time for discussion, as you said, is incredibly important. At the end of the day, learning happens when one reflects and shares with others. And indeed, my theoretical framework is all about social learning, which also supports the importance or the value of discussions and sharing with others and learning from others, as well as contributing to it.
So I was going to say, so it's really interesting for me to hear, and I guess for the listeners, what did you hear from the children? Can you share some snippets from your data of what did the children say in these discussions and reflections? What were their understandings and maybe views or even definitions of what poverty is and race? And we move on talking about race as well.
Yeah, so their perspectives and point of views were very much linked to their own experiences, again, as I mentioned, and their own background. But I think I will start perhaps with the topic of poverty, just to give an idea, as they are very different topics, poverty and race. So in terms of poverty, it was very interesting because taking into account that the children were coming from quite a privileged socioeconomic background, the children indeed, when asked what a rich person was, they were very confident, and they all shared the knowledge around rich people, meaning with comments such as, it's a person that has lots of money. Another child said, I once saw a rich person on TV, which also somehow leads you to the topic of social media, but that's a different one. And but when asked when a poor person was, and this is the most interesting part of it, they were doubtful at first. But then a child raised his hand and said, a poor person is a person that is being injured, that is sick. And then another child said, oh yes, I once saw a poor person with a hurt leg on the street. And this is very interesting because it takes you to the fact that we use terminology as adults in different ways. And so therefore we contribute to the children's understanding of what poor may mean. And also that the meaning of poor may be different depending on the context. Indeed, when we refer to people that are injured, such as poor him, poor her, poor me.
Yeah, or being poorly.
Or being poorly, exactly. We use that terminology, but there is more behind the term of poor. And in this case, I was being quite clear in terms of context. First, I asked what a rich person was, and then what a poor person was. So the link between poor and rich perhaps will have made it easier for the children to say someone perhaps with less resources and so on. But they didn't know. They knew, but that's what they knew. The understanding was somehow limited. Then, of course, although it was this instinct, it was yet valid, but we needed to go deeper into the subject. And that's where social drama became very useful. Through the sessions, the children developed their understanding of what a poor person or poverty was. And by week 6, we had another conversation about poverty. And then the children start sharing different things, such as 0 means poor, which is very interesting as well. Because poverty is now being linked to having nothing rather than having little or less. Again, something to work on. And 0 means nothing, 0 is poor. And all the children were saying, I got lots of money in my piggy bank. So instead of answering to what a poor person was, they were sharing the wealth.
So like the way that they could relate to it is saying that basically they were not poor because of these things that they do have, because that's what they can relate to.
That's what they can relate to, exactly. And that's why it is incredibly important to expose them to different situations and different terminology as well, or different understandings. And to these topics, that is incredibly important. So again, 0 is poor. Another child got lots of money in my piggy bank. And again, it's true that their understanding has indeed progressed, but there is still work to do, as you said, or I mentioned before. Poverty is not only not having anything or no money. It means as well not having certain resources or little, at least. And it's much wider than that. But again, we are talking about very, very complex concepts. But yes, then, for example, in another session, which was week 4, which is called, I call it No Water Day. Our aim was to help the children to understand that some children, some people in the world will, or again, next door, need to walk. They have no water, or at least not drinkable water at home, coming out of their taps. So we closed all the taps in the school, and we asked the children, let's go and find water. Let's go on a water walk. So we went on a water walk around the building in the outdoors area as well. And again, the children showcased critical thinking skills and their creativity as well. They found some water at the end of the day in an irrigation system that we had outdoors. They took it inside, then only to realize that it was dirty water and they didn't know how to clean it. We didn't know how to clean it, so we had to learn. Let's look for information in how to clean the water, and they couldn't drink that water. At the end of the day, this lasted for 3 hours. At that point, I think a teacher said, "Oh, look, the water has come back." But it was very interesting to gather their perspectives, to see what they were doing in that situation, and most importantly, to see if by the time they find water, they will either share it, they either waste it, what the reaction will be. And I think that this also brought the team or the class together, because at the start of the water walk, there were different children with different ideas going to different sides of the building. But by the end of the session, they were all sharing, talking between each other, trying to find ideas in a more cooperative way. And I think that's truly important in terms of education for sustainability, because it's all about cooperation and finding solutions together as we achieve more together. And then again in week 5, when we talk about people without resources or with little resources, and that they have to walk far away, perhaps emigrate, go to different countries. One of the children referred to the water hunt. They said, like in a water hunt, when we didn't have any water and we had to go on a walk.
So they're relating to their new experience that they've had now, and they can understand.
Exactly, which is incredibly interesting. It shows you how meaningful it is for them, and how ready they are to start engaging with these topics at such a young, early age. And yes, this social dramatic or social drama session helped them to connect real life scenarios with pretending scenarios in a way where we could process, or they could make meaning from these situations, which is very interesting as well.
Because you do use books to support the socio-dramatic play, don't you? You introduce the issue with a book, I know you mentioned last time, but books are not sufficient enough to give them that experience. So that's where that socio-dramatic play comes in, where I guess they can use, as they do like with role play anyway, this is what we know of role play, children make meaning of something that they have heard or experienced or seen, and then they replay the situation and scenario, and then they develop deeper meaning and understanding. So I guess they're doing the same thing here through replaying what maybe they have seen, read in a book together, or maybe something that they haven't had any experience of at all, but actually the book, the discussions, reflections, the socio-dramatic play, and then any kind of follow-up experiences or any kind of research and reading really then solidifies all of the children's understanding. So it's not just, a one-off of like, oh, some people are poor, or we've read a book, and we can understand other people in the world, and then we kind of forget about it and move on.
I think the main difference between only reading books, stories, and discussing about any topic really, but let's talk about the topic we are talking today, about social issues, is somehow limited. What we are doing when we are reading books and having discussions is, yes, we are sharing our points of views, but we are mainly, it's a one-way process mainly. We are giving them some, or somehow transferring some knowledge to them, and we are providing them with our understanding of what, for example, in this case, poverty is, what social drama does, or dramatic play, role play. There are different names, and so differences between them as well, as I explained in the last episode. But what social drama or social dramatic play does in this case is it gives them the opportunity to really explore the perspective by making meaning of what they understood. Because at the end of the day, it's a subjective process.
Hiya! Just quickly, I wanted to ask a favour from all of the listeners and viewers. It would really help this podcast if you subscribe on the platform you are listening or watching on. This will help the Voice of Early Childhood podcast to continue putting out thought-provoking and reflective episodes with a range of guests. And if you are enjoying listening to this podcast, please do share it with someone else who you think would love it too. And of course, as always, we encourage you to share your voice too. If you have reflections, thoughts, and comments, please do share this episode on social media with your comments and tag the Voice of Early Childhood. Let's keep these thought-provoking discussions going. Thank you. I'll let you get back to the episode now.
We give them the opportunity to perhaps arrive to their very own understanding of what the topic is. They are exploring, they are interpreting, like a bit like researchers. They are interpreting what the knowledge that they have recently acquired somehow. And that's when learning becomes meaningful and purposeful, because they are actually giving that meaning to the knowledge. They are somehow exploring it, interpreting it. So I think is very much needed. That role inside is very much needed for them to perhaps create or build their very own understanding.
And it all needs to be done so sensitively. And I know we talked about the role of the adult in a previous episode, and it's still very much the case, especially with the more sensitive issues. How do we introduce topics like this to children? How do we ensure that we encourage them to be curious and remain curious, and ensure that they do build that empathy, that awareness, and they do also, I guess, discuss these topics in a sensitive way, because children can come out with things that may be deemed as maybe even racist, as we're on the topic of racism. And it is difficult, I guess, as an adult more so, to hear things and think, oh, we can't say this, but the children aren't aware, of the social norms and also what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. So it's up to the adults to navigate these difficult situations, and I guess be brave enough to not shut down conversations, but actually open up conversations and expand and discuss things with the children. If they do say something that may not be socially acceptable, that may be racist, discuss why and what's the best way of going about it, rather than say, we don't say this, don't say that again, and things like that. Was there anything that came up in your research like that?
Yeah, in terms of race, a lot of things came up, and some of the results were in line with previous research, while others, I must say, vary from previous research. So it is true that even at a very young age, children possess the ability to categorize individuals based on race, based on their skin color or type of hair, etc., and that we can see in our daily lives. Now, in terms of sensitive topics such as racism and so on, we have to understand that this is constructed by society. If a child makes a comment, as you mentioned, makes a comment that perhaps might be racist, this is not the child speaking. This is the child copying or imitating what someone has said. Now, the big problem comes not by just the child saying what that racist comment, but by the fact that the child is not understanding what he's saying. That's why it's incredibly important to talk about diversity and race from a very early age. First, they are capable. They can understand. They do understand. They are curious about it. They ask each other, why do you have peachy skin? Why do you have pink skin? They are curious about it. They talk about similarities and differences. In fact, one of the most famous activities in early years education, especially for toddlers, is matching and sorting. So we are teaching them. We are teaching them from very early, and they are aware of it. In fact, children by the age of 3, which is quite young, can exhibit explicit forms of racial bias. But again, this is not built in their own understanding. This is something that has been passed on them. Because in order to develop that, you must have a previous knowledge or understanding of it that children do not have at that age, merely because we don't teach them about it. So that's why it's important. I have some examples here that I would love to share with you, just to show you that the children truly knew and were aware of differences among each other from the very first session. So I had, in one of the sessions, when I asked what race is and what diversity is, one of the children say that race, I asked what race is, and the child answers in the middle of a group. We were having a discussion just after reading a story. That means that my skin is peach and inside is peach.
Okay.
Now, that comment provoked the answer from another child and said, well, my skin is actually turning black. And then the other child came by, put the arm together, got his arm closer to the other child to compare skin colors and say, look, I'm also turning black just like you. So it shows that the children are aware of skin color and they happily share it. What I didn't see, aside that they can comprehend and accept different similarities, what I couldn't see was any kind of basis for discrimination. They talk very proudly of their skin color, and so they talk very proudly about their own culture, their mother tongue, where they were born, and so on, which shows as well that by nature, from the start, the children hold positive views about diversity and the type of race. This is what we, as educators, need to keep working on, need to somehow enhance. And for example, another child, when reading the story, I'm not sure, Angelica, if you know this storybook of the Smets and the Smooths.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I love that story with the blue aliens from the blue planet, the red aliens from the red planet. The blues cannot play with the reds cannot play with the blues. And at the end of the day, one red and one blue end up playing together and making a purple baby. It's a lovely story, well, when I finished reading the story, I asked, why do you think they end up together? Do you think that's right? Do you think that's nice? Do you have any thoughts? Why do you think they like each other? And despite being different. And then one of the children say they like each other because they want to play together. Because one day I wanted something that people are different, but they still like each other. So you can see a mix of words here, but you can also somehow take away the meaningful part of what this child said. What she's saying is, I'm not sure why you're asking us this question. Yes, one is red and the other one is blue. But if they like each other because they just want to play together. If they want to play together, why asking? Why saying no because you are red? Why saying yes because you are blue? And the same, if one day you want something different, that's okay. We still like each other. That's remarkable. We are talking about a child of 3 years old. That understanding, I mean, if only half of the world could think like her, it's remarkable. So this also shows you that children are ready, and not only ready, curious and interested in knowing more about our differences, and they are ready to celebrate them, and they truly enjoy. It's part of them. It's part of who we are, Angelica. We are all different. It's just something that goes with us since the moment we are born as well. So, and then there was another social drama session where the children, by the end of the program, where the children Well, I told the children that our house was demolished. We didn't have a house. Please grab your pillows. We need to find a place to live, place to sleep. Oh, I feel so hungry. Do you feel hungry? So we pretended to be hungry and really tired. And we went outside in the search of a home. And then we were knocking in different classrooms where the teachers were waiting for us, speaking in their native language, that in this case was not English. And this was very interesting as well, because you can see the children knocking at the doors. Excuse me, do you have a bed for me? Do you have food for us? And you will see the teacher proudly sharing the mother tongue, well, talking from Arabic, talking in Zulu, in different languages, and the children were shouting exactly the same reactions that you will see in adults nowadays. The children will be shouting because they will think that it's a matter of volume. All the children will just stop and say things very slowly, just in case, until one of them realized that communication was not possible and started using gestures.
Oh, okay, that's really interesting.
That's incredibly interesting as well. And it makes sense because if you think of it, the communication and language skills develop not at the same pace that they're understanding. So children at a very early age can understand more than they can actually speak. No? But yeah, very, very interesting. And that was the way they finally were invited to go into one of the teacher's country, and the teacher tried to show them different words, such as what eat is in Arabic and what sleep is in Arabic. So the children had to learn that words. They were incredibly willing to learn these words. It was like, they don't understand you. We need to learn a few words in their language, otherwise they won't know what we want. And they were trying to learn those words and trying to communicate, and so happy when they finally say the word in Arabic of eat. So they could eat and they could sleep and so on. And then in the following day, I say to the children, well, now you can choose your very own country. You create your very own country. You role play this drama session without any teachers. You choose. And it was very interesting because I had a side of children sharing their own experiences. Like, for example, I had a Russian child that created a country called India, but where Russian language was spoken. And then another child that was originally from India heard him and started sharing all his experiences about India. Oh, my family is from India. My brother is in India. You know, in my brother's house, there are a lot of toys. And they started sharing their backgrounds, their own culture, their own language, their own experiences, which was beautiful to see. And so going back to this Russian child creating a country called India, they made drawings and so on. When the children knocked at his door, he started speaking Russian. And then, of course, the children try to imitate Russian language, right? Accurately or not accurately, that's a topic to leave aside for another time. But they finally enter India country where Russian was spoken, and then the Russian child decided to feed them in their Italian restaurant.
Oh, very multicultural.
Very multicultural, but that's the beauty as well. This is actually a gorgeous scenario. We have a country that is called India, where Russian is spoken, and where there is an Italian restaurant. The only restaurant in the country is Italian. And so the child made pizza in the Italian restaurant. All in Russian, in the country called India. So I think this also shows how proud children are of sharing their differences and how open they are to other cultures, and how much they enjoy to have the opportunity to connect with their own heritage, as well as learn other language and other languages and cultures. So, yes.
And you're so right, when you were saying about the fact that children do naturally have that pride in their own heritage. And that's what you're finding here, when luckily, I guess, for them, hopefully this remains the case, they won't be experiencing that kind of racism or, the negative stereotypes and things like that. So it's really kind of sad to think about on the flip side, if children don't have that. I guess it's not necessarily about upbringing, it's just about that exposure in society to anyone or social media or anything that brings them, I guess, insecurities about who they are, their heritage, their background, their skin color. And that's that insecurity within them, but also maybe if it's not about them, but it's about someone else, then that brings about those stereotypes, that racism against other people. And it is those, unfortunately, society that drives this, and it's not, that children or people are innately racist.
Yeah, that's why exposure is very important. In fact, research shows that children from more diverse cities are less drawn into stereotyping and discriminatory behaviors, which is very interesting as well. But again, it's not only about the exposure in this case, it's also about having the possibility to celebrate each other's cultures and languages and to explore them and to share them as well with others. And not only for the children, as you said, it's an upbringing thing. I think the role of parents in this case is very important. I think the parents need to help as well and need to be aware that although they are very young, that doesn't make them any less aware. On the contrary, they are very interested on these topics, and they can see them. It's part of their daily lives. It's not about hiding, but about developing their understanding, their awareness, and celebrating their uniqueness and differences. And that's what makes the world one. This is what we should do as well. And the same for the teachers. At the end of the program, 2 teachers came by and say thank you for letting me share my mother tongue, for having the opportunity to share my culture, my traditions, and to celebrate this with children, which was lovely as well. And again, crucial and key. Again, teachers, we talked about this in the last episode, that teachers are also very important as they act as guides and role models in all topics.
And on the topic of parents, it's so important to really form those trusting partnerships with parents. So between educators and parents, to ensure that there is that understanding that when we do address sensitive issues with children in the settings, that the children are kind of safe and secure, and parents feel safe to share things about, their home life and their heritage, and that they're not going to be judged or criticized. And also the fact that these sensitive topics, like you said, they need to be addressed at a young age. And there is a lot of skepticism around, whether children are too young. And I know that you are saying, and your research is showing, that children are curious at such a young age, and they're ready to have these complex conversations around complex issues, and they are aware of things. So we do need to address these situations with them, rather than just hiding these issues from them, which can be really difficult and maybe even scary, around poverty, like what we mentioned before. But it's important to address these issues in a safe space before children then see any of this kind of play out in real life. Maybe they see something on social media that will not be addressed in the right way for them, maybe not developmentally appropriate, age appropriate way.
Yeah, indeed. And that's why it is very important to develop their understanding and provide them with activities that not only allow them to share their own culture and experience others' cultures and celebrate differences, but also that helps them to develop their sense of agency. So when there's cases of racism or other form of discrimination happen, they feel ready and strong to speak out against it, and so to take the right somehow. But I think the right decision.
So I guess in summary, when we're looking at your first theme around children's perceptions of poverty and race. So initially children had, I guess we could say, quite limited understanding of what poverty is. And then the understanding grew over time throughout the research.
Yes, indeed. The children's comprehension of poverty develop over time. And also the results emphasize that their capacity to participate in discussions regarding social sustainability issues such as poverty and again diversity, and not only with their peers but also with teachers, and I must say as well on their own.
And in terms of when we were talking about race, from what I remember you saying, children seem to naturally be proud of their race, their skin color, their heritage, and understanding and accepting of each other.
Yes, but at the very same time, it is very important that we give them the opportunities to share who they are and their backgrounds, because this is when children can actually feel proud, when they feel safe to share, and we need to provide them with those opportunities. If they do not share, they won't talk, it will be a topic that doesn't develop, and by the time they face any kind of discriminatory act, it might be too late. And as we always say, it's not about finding a solution to the problem, but about preventing it from happening. And this is our duty as educators. So we have to prevent these things from happening and help children to develop their knowledge, understanding of the world, life skills, and of course, sense of agency.
And I was just thinking back to earlier when you were sharing the story around the Smeds and the Smoos, and it was so nice to hear in the end that the children had so much kind of positivity around that. And I was kind of, whilst you were talking about that, I was rattling my brain and trying to remember. I did see some criticism of the book on social media, but I couldn't remember what exactly it was or where. So I kind of didn't say too much in that moment. I was just thinking, what was it that I remember? But it was nice to hear that actually the experience that you gave the children and the learning from it and all the reflections and discussions were so valuable. And it really kind of made me think, actually, it all goes back to the adult's role so much, what the adult brings to the children. Any book, there might be some parts of, there's always books that I kind of look at and review now and again. And there are some parts in books where I think, this could have been expanded on more, or this was a missed opportunity and things like that. But actually, it's up to the adult to really ensure that they support the children's understanding and learning and reflections and really expand the story or reflect together and, I guess, act as co-researcher like you have been with the children. So that moment really kind of emphasized for me the role of the adult and how important it is. It's not just you can have a fantastic book, or you can have some great resources in the setting, or maybe you can have not many resources, but in either way, it's all about the adult and what they bring to the children's experiences.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And of course, if it was with the help of policies and the educational system, it would be even better because, again, the role of the adults is very important, and the teachers also, the staff members. And so the local community need also opportunities to be able to share, to role model somehow that the beauty of sharing your differences and not only celebrate your similarities, and that's a job for all, I must say. For all.
Definitely. Well, thank you once again, Carmela, for sharing your research with everyone. So this was the first theme that emerged that we talked about, children's perceptions of poverty and race. And for all of the listeners to hear. So I'll just say that if you haven't already listened to the first episode introducing Carmela's research, you can find it on the Voice of Early Childhood website, along with her article as well, or search for the Voice of Early Childhood on podcast streaming platforms or YouTube. And then the next episode is going to be the third theme. Is that right? The second theme that emerged. The first episode was the introduction. This was the second theme. And then we're going to be discussing the third theme which emerged, which is around possession as a form of power.
So, yes.
So this, sounds really interesting. I know that it's a really interesting topic.
Thank you, Angelica. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for all of the listeners. Thank you to all of the listeners for tuning in. And thank you once again, Carmela, for sharing the research. And we'll hear from you again soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Angelica.